You ever notice how the best family photos are always taken right before the family explodes? There's my fiancée, Emily, blonde hair catching the California sun, holding my hand like she's never gonna let go. My mom's in the back, crying happy tears. My dad's holding a barbecue tong like it's a shotgun. And everyone's smiling because they think this wedding is gonna be the love story of the decade. Cute, right? Except what none of them knew is that 3 days later, she'd be committing what I like to call a premarital felony, cheating with her ex, the same guy she once swore was just a friend. And yeah, I know. Every guy says they saw the signs. I didn't. I was too busy playing Groomzilla, obsessing over which craft beer to serve at the reception, and making sure the playlist had both Frank Sinatra and Snoop Dogg, because I wanted every age group to feel included. Call me thoughtful, or call me the perfect setup for a betrayal so cinematic it deserved an Oscar. But let's rewind, or actually, let's fast forward to the ending. Picture this. I'm standing at the altar. The crowd's leaning in like they're watching the season finale of their favorite toxic love reality show, and Emily's smiling that smile. Oh, that smile. The same smile she probably gave her ex 3 nights ago when they were just catching up over drinks. Yeah, I found out. The details? Oh, they're juicy, and I could tell you right now. But then where's the suspense? We Americans live for the slow burn, for the twist that makes you spill your iced latte all over your shirt. So let's pull back to where it all looked perfect. Because that's when the seeds of revenge started growing, even if I didn't know it yet. The proposal had been straight out of a Pinterest board. I took her to Yosemite, hiked up to Glacier Point, dropped to one knee while the sun painted the valley gold. She cried. I cried. A tourist from Ohio cried. Somewhere a bald eagle probably flew by just to bless the engagement. From there, we built the dream. A beachside wedding in Santa Barbara, a taco truck for late-night snacks, her favorite indie band playing our first dance. Everyone in the family approved, which in itself should have been a red flag. My family has a history of loving people too much too quickly. Uncle Ray once invited his girlfriend of 2 weeks to Thanksgiving and introduced her as his soulmate. They broke up before dessert. But with Emily, it felt different. It felt safe, which is hilarious in hindsight. I guess that's the thing about betrayal. You don't see it coming because you've convinced yourself you're the exception. I ignored little things. The way she'd go silent when her phone buzzed. The girls' nights that ended with her coming home smelling like a cologne I didn't own. The random mood swings that could put a telenovela star to shame. My buddy Jack, my best man, had joked once, "If this turns into a cheating scandal, I call dibs on the film rights." I laughed. God, I laughed. Because in my head, Emily wasn't capable of that. She was the girl who made me soup when I was sick, who cried at dog commercials, who said, "Family is everything," with such conviction, you'd think she was running for political office. But that's the dark magic of toxic love. It looks wholesome until it doesn't. And by the time you realize it's poison, you've already built a house on top of the landmine. And speaking of family, mine adored her. My mom called her the daughter she never had. My dad let her drive his vintage Chevy, which he wouldn't even let me touch until I was 25. Even my grandma, who thinks every woman under 40 is probably a gold digger, gave her the thumbs up. It was like Emily had infiltrated the entire bloodline. And I guess that's the genius of it. If you win the family, you win the blind loyalty package. It's the perfect cover for cheating, because who would suspect the angel their mom bakes extra cookies for? Looking back now, I can see all the foreshadowing. The wedding planning became more about Instagrammable moments than about us. She cared more about the champagne tower than about choosing our vows. And when she pushed for inviting her ex because we're mature adults now, I should have set off the DEFCON alarms, but I didn't. Instead, I shook his hand at a pre-wedding barbecue, offered him a beer, and told him, "Glad you could come, man." Yeah. I invited the enemy into my own camp. Classic rookie move in the war of love. And here's where the conspiracy theory part of my brain kicks in. What if this wasn't some impulsive fling? What if it was all premeditated? A long game of emotional chess where she gets the wedding gifts, the social media glory, and a clean getaway back to the guy she never really left. Sounds paranoid, right? But then again, so did she cheated 3 days before the wedding. And look how that turned out. So that was the calm before the storm. The pretty little postcard version of our love story. The kind you'd frame if you didn't know it was about to get ripped in half. Because in just a few days, that altar I'd dreamed about would turn into the stage for the most public, most delicious act of revenge I could have ever imagined. And honestly, part of me wishes I could thank her. Without the betrayal, I wouldn't have gotten my grand finale. 3 days before the wedding, I found out the kind of truth that doesn't just break your heart. It slaps you across the face, steals your wallet, and sets your house on fire for good measure. I was in my kitchen, sipping burnt coffee and trying to decide whether to go with the navy tie or the charcoal one for the big day, when my best man, Jack, called. Jack never calls in the morning. Morning is his don't talk to me unless you're a coffee pot time. So when my phone lit up, I knew something was wrong. He didn't even say hello. He just said, "Bro, I don't know how to tell you this, but Emily was with Mark last night." Now, for context, Mark isn't just any Mark. He's the Mark, the ex-boyfriend who somehow managed to look like a surfer, a lumberjack, and a bad life decision all at the same time. The guy who once took Emily skydiving on their second date and has been living rent-free in her nostalgia folder ever since. The guy she insisted we invite to the wedding because we're all adults here, and he's part of my history. Yeah, history, all right. Turns out, history likes to repeat itself, sometimes in the back seat of a Toyota Tacoma. Jack's source? His girlfriend, who just so happened to be at the same bar Emily and Mark were in. Apparently, the two of them weren't exactly hiding. There were drinks, there was dancing, there was what she called the kind of kissing that belongs in a bad Netflix rom-com. And then they left together. No good story ever starts with, "and then they went to his place to look at his new kitchen backsplash." My first reaction wasn't even rage. It was confusion. Like, really? 3 days before the wedding? That's not just betrayal, that's Olympic-level sabotage. If you're gonna nuke the relationship, at least give it a week's buffer so people don't have to return their tuxedos. I sat there, trying to process, my brain running on a loop of, this can't be real. And do I still have the receipt for that cake deposit? Of course, I confronted her. Sort of. I drove to her place, but halfway there I had this thought. If I just blow up at her now, I lose the element of surprise. And in America, we love a good plot twist. We eat it up like deep-fried Oreos at a county fair. So instead of banging on her door, I turned the car around and started planning. Revenge wasn't just an option. It was the only option. Here's the thing about toxic love. It's like a reality show you can't quit. Part of you wants to walk away, but another part of you wants to see just how bad it can get. And cheating? Cheating is the season finale. It's the betrayal that makes all the other petty fights look like rehearsal. But me? I wasn't going to play the heartbroken groom. I was going to be the director of my own chaos. I started gathering evidence. Screenshots from Jack's girlfriend. Social media posts from people who saw them together. A blurry photo of Mark's truck parked outside her apartment at 2 a.m. Because nothing says romance like grainy night vision photography. By midnight, I had a folder on my laptop labeled Operation Wedding Day that would have made the FBI proud. And somewhere in that frenzy, I realized I wasn't even sad anymore. I was excited. I was energized. This wasn't going to be some quiet breakup where I returned the ring and we cried over coffee. This was going to be a full-blown spectacle. My family, her family, all our friends, they were going to see the truth, live in 4K resolution. The irony? Emily was still texting me like nothing happened, sending me Pinterest links for table settings, asking if I preferred the vanilla or lemon filling for the cake. The audacity was almost impressive. I played along, of course, because what's a good revenge plot without the fake smile, the calm before the storm? I replied with, "Vanilla sounds great, babe," while mentally rehearsing my altar speech. But here's where the conspiracy theory part of my brain started kicking in again. What if she wanted me to find out? What if this was some twisted power play, some test to see if I'd still go through with the wedding? Maybe she thought she could have both. Me for the stability, him for the adrenaline rush. A 2-for-1 deal in the supermarket of toxic love. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining the moment I'd flip the script. I saw her walking down the aisle. That perfect dress, that perfect fake smile. I saw myself holding her hands, looking deep into her eyes, and instead of saying "I do," saying "I know." And then, well, you'll have to wait for part 3. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that in the theater of revenge, timing is everything. And I was about to put on the performance of my life. Here's the thing about weddings. Everyone thinks the ceremony is about love. It's not. It's theater. It's the Super Bowl of family politics, high school grudges, and quiet judgment over whether the bridesmaid dresses were a mistake. And mine was about to be the halftime show that made Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction look like a church picnic. The church was packed. Sunlight poured through the stained glass windows, like we'd paid God himself for the lighting package. My mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My dad was shaking hands with her dad like two mob bosses sealing a deal. The music swelled, the guests stood, and here came Emily, looking like the cover of a bridal magazine, every step a calculated act of innocence. The dress fit her like it had been sewn by angels with really good credit. And me? I was calm, too calm, because I knew something she didn't. Today wasn't her wedding. It was my revenge tour. We met at the altar, and the minister started his bit about love being patient and kind. I almost laughed, because in my head, I was editing the voiceover. Love is patient, kind, and sometimes hooks up with its ex in a Toyota Tacoma. Emily squeezed my hands and whispered, "You look so handsome." Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea how handsome revenge looks under perfect lighting. When the moment came for vows, she went first. She read hers like a Hallmark movie script, talked about fate, family, and how I made her a better person. I almost clapped, not because it was touching, but because it was the best acting performance I'd ever seen without a SAG card. Then it was my turn. I pulled out my vow card, except it wasn't vows. It was a speech. I started soft, thanking our families, talking about how much I'd looked forward to this day. I could see her relax, thinking maybe this was just another cliché wedding moment. And then I pivoted. But before we promise each other forever, there's something our guests should know. Something about betrayal, about cheating, about the difference between true love and toxic love. The room went dead silent. Even the babies stopped making noise. I could feel every neck in the place crane forward like they were trying to hear the next line of a murder podcast. Emily's smile froze. I pulled out my phone, hooked it up to the mic system, and played the blurry but audio-clear clip of her laughing with Mark at the bar. Then a screenshot of their text messages appeared on the projector we'd set up for the photo slideshow. Last night was amazing, glowed in 200-point font. Gasps, whispers. One guy in the back straight up said, "Holy shit." Her mom looked like she'd just found out Santa isn't real. My mom's face turned into that quiet fury only a Midwestern mom can pull off. The kind that says, "I will bake you cookies and bury you in the backyard." Emily reached for my hand, stammering, "This isn't what it looks like." And I actually laughed. "It looks like cheating, in HD." Mark wasn't in the church, lucky for him, but I bet somewhere his ears were burning. Probably from the heat of hell I'd just lit under him. Now here's the twist. I didn't storm off. I didn't shout. I let it breathe. I let the betrayal marinate in the air like the world's most awkward perfume. Then I said, "Marriage is about trust, and once that's gone, so is the marriage." I handed the mic back to the minister, turned to the guests and said, "Drinks are still on me. Enjoy the open bar." The place erupted. Half the crowd clapped like they'd just seen justice served. The other half awkwardly shuffled toward the exit, unsure whether to hug me or pretend they hadn't witnessed the social equivalent of a nuclear detonation. Emily stood frozen, still in her perfect dress, looking like a bride in one of those Gothic paintings where you're not sure if she's alive or not. As I walked down the aisle alone, I passed my best man Jack, who just mouthed, "Legend." Outside, the California sun hit my face, and for the first time in weeks, I felt light. The kind of light you only feel when you've burned the bridge so completely there's no way back, and you're glad for it. Was it petty? Absolutely. Did it solve anything? Not really. But in a world where cheating and betrayal often hide in shadows, I dragged them into the spotlight. And if that's not justice, I don't know what is. If you think the story ended when I walked out of that church, you don't know how American family drama works. In movies, the credits roll right after the hero walks away into the sunset. In real life, that's when the sequel starts, only with less CGI and more paperwork. The open bar inside the reception hall had basically turned into a war zone. My family was split into two camps, the "I can't believe she did that" crowd, and the "we should still be polite for the sake of the families" diplomats. My mom was in the first group. She'd already told two of my uncles to stop making excuses for that girl, while my grandma sat in the corner sipping champagne like a mafia boss watching the downfall of a rival. Emily's side of the family, meanwhile, looked like they'd been hit by a meteor. Her dad was pacing, her mom was crying, and her cousin Stacy was already on her phone, probably tweeting the whole thing with a hashtag like "wedding from hell." Emily tried calling me 16 times. I didn't answer. It's not that I didn't have anything to say. I just didn't feel like repeating myself. You cheat. You lose the right to a conversation. That's not bitterness. That's policy. Instead, I went back to my apartment, kicked off my shoes, and opened a cold beer. I watched the sun set and thought, well, at least I don't have to send thank you cards now. But here's the part Emily didn't know. This wasn't just revenge for my heart. This was about protecting myself. See, 3 weeks before the wedding, my lawyer friend, bless you, Dave, had suggested I get a prenuptial agreement. At the time, Emily laughed it off, called it unromantic, said, "We're family now, we don't need paperwork," which in hindsight is exactly what someone planning to take half your stuff would say. So I quietly updated the deed to my house, moved a chunk of my savings into a separate account, and made sure that every wedding expense was either non-refundable or under my name only. So when she finally showed up at my place 2 days later, makeup smudged, voice cracking, trying to spin the cheating into just a mistake, I let her talk. I let her cry. And when she finally asked, "Can we work this out?" I told her, "We already did. I worked it out so you leave with nothing but the dress." And I meant it. The look on her face, priceless. It wasn't anger, it was realization. Realization that her toxic love game plan had failed, that she'd walked straight into a trap she didn't even see coming. She tried to call me heartless, but that's the thing about revenge. It requires a little heartlessness to get the job done. Of course, the gossip didn't die down. Small towns, big cities, it doesn't matter. You pull a stunt like mine, it travels. Friends I hadn't talked to since high school suddenly just wanted to check in. My boss heard about it from his wife's cousin's Pilates instructor. Even my dentist brought it up while cleaning my teeth. "Man, I heard about the wedding. Savage move. Apparently, betrayal makes you a victim, but public revenge? That makes you a legend." And the final twist? 2 months later, I got a call from Mark. Yeah, that Mark. He sounded drunk, maybe desperate. He told me he and Emily were over, shocking, and then, in a moment of poetic justice, admitted she'd cheated on him too. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. It was like watching a bad sequel crash and burn before it even hit theaters. So, I sent him a message I'd been saving. A photo from the altar that day, me holding the mic, Emily looking like a deer in headlights. I captioned it, "Don't say I didn't warn you." Then I blocked his number. Revenge doesn't always need a sequel, but sometimes the epilogue is just too good to skip. Now every time I think about that day, I don't feel the sting of betrayal anymore. I feel clean. Like I took out the trash and the whole house smells better. My family still talks about it at gatherings, half in disbelief, half in admiration. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. Because if there's one lesson here, it's this. Cheating is easy. Revenge is art. And if you are going to be the victim of toxic love, you might as well turn it into the greatest performance of your life.